SDG 12, Responsible Consumption and Production. The underlying principle here is to ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the issues that we have in relation to limited resources and global resources running out, using products sustainably, ensuring that products are recycled. The circular economy is a really important issue in relation to responsible consumption, and we will be looking at that in some detail later on. So let's have a look at a number of the key statistics and facts around responsible production and consumption. It's clear, I think, to everyone that unsustainable patterns of consumption and production are the root cause of many of the problems that we have, including climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. Our overall reliance on natural resources is increasing and has been increasing very significantly. It rose by over 65% globally from 2000 to 2020. And bear in mind, the years that we're talking about there, everyone was familiar with the issues that we have, the climate change issues. These are not new. So it has risen in spite of best efforts, 65% in the last 20 years. The vast majority of the world's electronic waste is still not being safely managed. If you look at some of the statistics there, 1.2% in Latin America, 1.6% in Sub-Saharan Africa. Europe and North America, as you might expect, are doing better with 46.9%, but still there's a long way to go. And the global average is only 22.8%. So, we're talking very significant challenges in this particular SDG. Food waste. Too much food is being lost or wasted in every country every day. From harvesting, transport, storage, and processing, there's all areas where food loss can occur. 13.3% of the world's food is lost after harvesting and before it reaches the retail markets. 17% of total food is wasted at the consumer level. I'm sure you're all familiar with examples and you see it on a daily basis, certainly in restaurants and cafes and also at home. I think, it takes a significant amount of management and effort to ensure that you minimize your food waste. So responsible consumption and production. There's 11 targets in this SDG, and we'll have a look at them now. So target 12.1, implement the 10-year framework of programs on sustainable consumption and production. All countries taking action, with developed countries taking the lead, taking into account the development and capabilities of developing countries. So the 10-year framework is a framework that supports capacity building and facilitates access to technical and financial assistance for developing countries. The indicator for this particular target is the number of countries developing, adopting, or implementing policy instruments aimed at supporting the shift to sustainable consumption. Target 12.2, by 2030, achieving sustainable management and efficient use of natural resources. Clearly, that's a very important target, and I think we can see that reflected nationally as well in much of the recent legislation that was passed, particularly the recent Circular Economy Act. Our increase in the consumption of natural resources has gone from 27 billion tonnes in 1970 to 92 billion tonnes in 2017. And I think we discussed earlier Overshoot Day, and just for any of you who don't remember, Earth Overshoot Day this year was the 28th of July. And that's the day on which all the resources that could be replenished occurs. So obviously in a sustainable world, that would be the end of the 31st of December, but it's now at the end of July. So, we are on an utterly unsustainable path of consumption at the moment. The indicator for this particular target, 12.2.1, material footprints per capita, and material footprints per GDP. There are ways of looking at how we might monitor this. Domestic material consumption per capita, and domestic material consumption per GDP. Target 12.3. By 2030, halve per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer levels and reduce food losses along production and supply chains, including post-harvest losses. Now, this is obviously something that everyone is going to have to buy into and make a priority of. An estimated 17% of global food production is wasted. Food that is lost and wasted accounts for 38% of the energy use in the global food system. When we look at the targets in this particular SDG later on, we will have a deeper look at those statistics. Indicators for the target on this particular SDG are food loss index and food waste index. Target 12.4. By 2020, achieve the environmentally sound management of chemicals and all waste throughout their life cycle, in accordance with agreed international frameworks, and significantly reduce their release to air, water, and soil to minimize their adverse impacts on human health and the environment. This is a very clear target to reduce any kind of chemicals that are being introduced to the environment. According to the WHO, the World Health Organization, each year air pollution is responsible for nearly 7 million deaths around the globe. 7 million. 9 out of 10 human beings currently breathe air that exceeds the WHO's guideline limits for pollutants, and those living in low and middle income countries suffer the most. 9 out of 10 human beings. So big challenges there. So the indicators that we're going to look at and use for this particular target are the number of parties to international multilateral environmental agreements on hazardous waste and other chemicals that meet their commitments and obligations in transmitting information as required by each relevant agreement. So we'll be monitoring the number of parties that monitor this on behalf of individual governments, and hazardous waste generated per capita and the proportion of hazardous waste treated by type of treatment. Again, that's another metric by which to monitor progress in this SDG. By 2030, substantially reduce waste generation through prevention, reduction, recycling, and reuse. So I have mentioned the circular economy before. It's something I'm doing a lot of work on myself at the moment, and it's something that's going to be very central to a sustainable future for all of us. Moving from the linear economy to a circular economy is going to be key for this goal, for achieving this goal. The indicator for reducing waste here is going to be national recycling rates, tons of materials recycled, etc. If we can move towards a circular economy model, we will design waste out. So we just won't be generating waste. We will try and, if we do have material at the end of a production process or at the end of something that we don't use, it'll be waste that can be reused meaningfully, or rather than being dumped in the way that some products are dumped and cannot be put back into cycles that can generate new materials. Target 12.6. Encourage companies, especially large and transnational companies, to adopt sustainable practices and integrate sustainability information into their reporting cycle. Again, this is a very important target in this particular SDG. It's something that we can all contribute to by buying sensibly and buying products that we know contribute appropriately and are produced by companies that have sustainable practices. Substantial progress is being made, and the work of the public businesses and waste industry is paying off, with plastic recycling increasing to 31% and forecast to be at 34% by the end of 2022. But obviously more is going to be needed here. On this target, we're talking an indicator of the number of companies publishing sustainability reports. Sustainability reporting is going to be key going forward, getting companies to report their sustainability status, their sustainability statistics, their targets, their aspirations. Bring sustainability front and center primarily, but also provides a way for people to review and monitor, and it provides a way for people to make informed decisions about using certain companies. Target 12.7. Promote public procurement practices that are sustainable in accordance with national policies and priorities. Again, this is key to making progress in this particular goal. Public procurement refers to the process by which public authorities, such as government departments or local authorities, purchase works, goods, or services from companies. The decisions need to be made in line with sustainable priorities. Do you think the Irish government are doing this? Well, I can tell you that there are moves afoot at the moment. There's a significant amount of movement in the public procurement system, and there's a lot of work being carried out in relation to public procurement nationally, both at government level and at a local authority level. The EPA have produced guidelines, and there's a lot of time and energy and effort being spent by local authorities to upskill their staff in procurement and ensure that their procurement systems are indeed sustainable. The indicator for this, the number of countries implementing sustainable public procurement policies and action plans. And we do have one of those, and we will be having a look at that in more detail later on. Target 12.8. By 2030, ensure that people everywhere have the relevant information and awareness for sustainable development and lifestyles in harmony with nature. To meet all the goals, we need to raise awareness. How aware are you of what you need to do to be sustainable? I'm sure some of you have your ideas, have good ideas, and I'm sure everyone has some ideas of what they might do, but hopefully, after doing this course, you will have a wider range of ideas of things you might be able to do and a greater awareness, hopefully, of the things that are being done globally and nationally in relation to sustainability. And hopefully, you will have a better understanding of how these systems are working, and you will have more knowledge in relation to where these activities are happening and what organizations you can either work with or subscribe to that will promote sustainability and sustainable development in the Irish context. The indicator for this is the extent to which global citizenship, education, and education for sustainable development are mainstreamed in A, national policies, B, curriculum, C, teacher education, and D, student assessment. Interestingly, these are all being addressed certainly at the moment in ATU. This program, of course, is designed with the idea of encouraging global citizenship and global responsibility, education for sustainable development. Target 12A. Support developing countries to strengthen their scientific and technological capacity to move towards more sustainable consumption and production patterns. It's unfair to expect developing countries to make changes without support in funding and technology. The thing is, in most cases, these countries already consume less, and it does seem very unfair that they are often expected to make some of the bigger moves. The way this particular SDG target is going to be monitored is looking at the installed renewable energy generating capacity in developing countries in watts per capita. That's a very interesting it's a very interesting indicator for this particular target. I think we'll probably have some spend a little bit of time looking on that as a particular target, as a particular indicator, how fair it is in the bigger picture, in the global context. 12B, develop and implement tools to monitor sustainable development impacts for sustainable tourism that creates jobs and promotes local culture and products. Clearly, this is very important as well. Sustainable tourism refers to sustainable practices in and by the tourism industry. It's an aspiration to acknowledge all impacts of tourism, both positive and negative. It aims to minimize the negative impacts and maximize the positive ones. The monitoring of this will involve the indicator will be implementation of standard accounting tools to monitor economic and environmental aspects of tourism sustainability. Yes, I'm delighted to say that there are a number of good projects and programs being in operation in Ireland at the moment, such as the Green Hospitality Programme, for instance. The Green Hospitality Programme awards sustainable and green practices in the hotel and catering industry in Ireland and has been very successfully rolled out over the last 15 years in Ireland. Target 12C, rationalise inefficient fossil fuel subsidies that encourage wasteful consumption by removing market distortions in accordance with national circumstances, including by restructuring taxation and phasing out those harmful subsidies where they exist to reflect their environmental impacts, taking fully. Not so much in Ireland, but globally there are still quite significant challenges in relation to this. The indicator for this would be basically the amount of fossil fuel subsidies based on production and consumption per unit of GDP. So this is quite an easy one to monitor, but clearly it's any kind of subsidy on fossil fuel is going to cause issues in relation to the financial viability of renewable energy. So for responsible consumption and production, we have 11 targets. So you might review them before we move on.